Hello, I'm Marcus DevRel at Edge and Node, and I am really happy to be bringing you Graph Builder's Office Hours number 50. That's 50. We've been going for 50 weeks, and I think we've missed maybe 1 or 2 weeks just due to circumstance. It's been really, really consistent for the most part. And what better time to have episode 50 than have the episode focus on subgraphs as a whole and subgraphs as they will be. And that's going to be with, we have in the incredible Alex Pakalniskis. Oh, well, so close. Pakalniskis?
Pakalicious. No,
Pakalniskis. Paka. Oh, I'll get that someday. Paka. And he is product manager at Edge and Node. And he is here to share with us what's coming down the pipeline in terms of building with subgraphs and how they, of course, relate to GraphNode, which he is responsible for. He's the product manager with GraphNode. And from there, we can open up for questions. And I'm curious to this presentation as well to see what is going to happen with GraphNode and subgraphs and how everything's going to be. So, Paka, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started with Edge and Node, and what you're going to be doing today.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, great to be here. Thanks, Marcus. Hey, everyone, I'm Alex. Also go by Paka, just because Alex is a painfully common name, but either one works. Based out of the Mojave Desert in California, and love gardening and watching fun animation and playing video games in my free time. And I've been at Edge Node for 13 months now, which, yay, it has been pretty fun. And my pipeline into Edge Node was kind of a GRTIQ podcast interview. And that's how I kind of got on the radar of some of the hiring managers there. And so also shout out to GRTIQ.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to GRTIQ.
Yeah. I guess we'll jump right into it. The way I view this kind of talk, it's really, I'm in no way a subgraph wizard pro expert. Marcus is light years ahead of me. Some of you builders are like light years ahead of me, but I'm really focused on how can we make subgraphs better, more useful, easier to use for you all. And so I still think that even though I'm not necessarily a wizard, I can help in that respect, because I really value a nice streamlined product experience. And so I guess to start, I'd like to look back on the last few quarters briefly, just because I think it'll really set the stage for some of our current thinking on what subgraphs could become. I think that this presentation has a healthy mix of reflection, looking at what's actually going to happen in the somewhat near future, and then a little bit of hypothetical, maybe postulating on what could become. So hopefully you enjoy that journey, and really reiterating the point, please do engage and let your thoughts be known. The core devs really do want to engage with the community and kind of get your feedback on things. So to start, let's look at kind of Q4 of last year through Q2 of this year. So that's, for those of you less ingrained in kind of corporate time horizons, that's, October of last year through end of June of this year. So one of the most exciting features that we released at the GraphNode team and the Graph CLI kind of graph tooling repo is aggregations and time series. So I guess historically, if there's been time data in a subgraph, it's usually been handled as an integer, but there's some limitations with that. And so recently we introduced the ability, or the native support for a timestamp scalar, and pairing that with the ability to aggregate these time series data so that you can create kind of bucketed values. So generating things like a daily average price or an hourly total transfers. And so for DeFi applications, that's super useful. I've seen a lot of subgraphs in the wild.
I want to vouch for this.
Oh, for sure.
Like, this feature has made the experience of compute so much more enjoyable. It's intuitive, it's easy to use, it's only a few lines that you have to change in the schema as opposed to having to run the mapping. So kudos to you. And mappings are great. You can get super creative, but sometimes you just want to get something done and have it just be a few lines of code. And that is exactly this. It's very, very well done. So kudos to you and your team on this.
No, totally. Shout out to Lutter, David
Yeah.
Lutter. He's a beast. He's one of those wizards among us.
One of those guys.
Yeah. Not to talk bad about mappings, but I've definitely seen some seriously gnarly mappings in the wild of people doing these aggregations before this feature was available. And so it's kind of tedious to do some of these kind of daily total or daily max type things. So I'm super stoked to see more and more projects migrate and just from the start use this aggregation framework. And so they don't have to have crazy mappings that they have to then maintain and potentially have bugs. So yeah.
And I'll share the mappings in the chat so everyone can just go take a look at those docs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
great.
please hop in, test out time series aggregations. Yeah.
No, definitely. And so later today, I'm going to talk about an idea we have that kind of extends time series in a, I think, more useful way. So excited to get feedback on that as well. And so I'm not going to belabor line by line this code, but essentially we've extended the GraphQL schema syntax in Subgraphs so you can declare entities that are time series, and then you can declare entities that are these aggregation types that group the time series data into either hourly and or daily buckets, and you just have to specify the input source and how you want to aggregate things. I strongly encourage you to check the aggregations docs, which I have linked a little lower here. If you'd like to learn about all the different functions you can input into the aggregate directives, but I just added a simple example here of sum of price over hour and day, which is pretty powerful with only a few lines of GraphQL schema. So that's pretty sweet. And then here's an example query where you'd be able to query hourly data greater than a specific timestamp and get some fields returned, which is pretty cool. And I think that's the beauty of GraphQL and Subgraphs, is being able to pretty easily specify what data you want and just get back that data you need and nothing else. And here's the link to aggregations in case you'd like to learn more. That was kind of a whirlwind highlight of aggregations, but I know Marcus has previously covered this, and there's some examples in the wild using it already, so really excited to see more, hopefully after this presentation.
On a previous episode of GraphNode's Office Hours, we actually had to see Moan come on and build with that. And there's been a few feature updates since that episode, but it's good to see someone in the wild actually building live. So if you want to get that with an expert, go ahead and check that video out. I'll drop that.
And yeah, let us know if you want to have more live walkthroughs with these features, because we're happy to come and do that. So if that's useful for you all, do let us know. So that was a quick overview of aggregations and time series. If you have questions specific to aggregations and time series that aren't answered in the docs or any of the links that we shared, please do reach out in the feedback form. It has questions or like where you can input, and hopefully you can see real quickly. You can rate it. You can ask questions. Link part of this presentation that was confusing, and I'll get back to you. So yeah, let's move on to indexed argument filtering. This is another pretty new feature that we're excited about that kind of lends to the energy of just getting the data you want and nothing more. And so topic filters or indexed argument filters allow developers to precisely filter the blockchain events based on values of their indexed arguments. So that's a bit of jargon, but Essentially, we're exposing the ability to further filter what blockchain events you're storing with your subgraph. And so now instead of default everything, you can specify certain contract addresses that you'd like to listen to. And so we have this fictitious example of a token solidity contract with a transfer event and these indexed arguments. So there's an address, which is from an address type of 2 and a UNIS 256 value. And so in this example, we're going to work with the topic 0 and topic 1 and topic 2, which are the from and the to arguments in this transfer event. And so let's see how this would be defined in a subgraph. And so you're going to specify this in the subgraph manifest. And really in the event handlers, you just specify topics underneath the handler. And so it's fairly simple, but it can be super powerful. And so you can specify one or more addresses, just separate them commas, and this really reduces the amount of data that you're quote unquote listening to with your subgraph. And so it can significantly reduce bloat and just make things faster.
Yeah, question on this one. I haven't had a chance to tinker with this one just yet. Is that this is essentially, from what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of pre-filtering, just getting things organized before they even touch the triggers, before they even trigger the handlers?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So for certain use cases, this can be super powerful.
Cool.
Not
Awesome.
for everyone, definitely, but for those that need this kind of pre-filtering ability, super nice to have. And so,
Yeah, and does it, I mean, it wouldn't even trigger the handler, so it just simply goes right into the entity without even having to worry about that extra step of processing.
So really excited.
Super cool.
Yeah, maybe we can do a live demo of this in a coming session. That might be cool.
Yeah.
Especially if we could pair it with like aggregations, and because I think that's where it's nice to have these one-off demos, but it's cool seeing like everything kind of chunked together to build a not necessarily complicated, but a sophisticated, simple subgraph.
Sure. Let's talk after this and
that's
see if we can get either you or, I mean, I could build a little subgraph too and see if we can get this, because I would like to be able to show off these features in real time.
I'm happy to bumble on camera as well.
That's gonna be the title of the workshop: bumbling on camera with
Paka struggles to deploy a subgraph. I mean,
that's the nature of live workshops. Always is.
Okay. But yeah, so this is a fairly quick example or overview of indexed argument filtering. You can see we're really just filtering transfer events for specific addresses on either the sender or receiver argument. You can extend this to different smart contracts, but this is just a fairly simple token transfer example. But the main point is the subgraph will only index the transactions that occur directly from this specific sender to this specific receiver. So I think this is a pretty new feature. So I haven't seen a ton of subgraphs in the wild with this, but encourage you all to tinker with it and give us feedback.
I'm looking for this is also linked in that document that you created earlier, officehours.alex.
And it's also in our official docs.
Perfect.
I created a disclaimer at the top of this document that I kind of skipped over. A lot of the content here is an abridged version from the Graph's official docs on creating a subgraph. Some of it is content that will exist there eventually, or maybe not, for some of the more hypothetical features. But this is kind of what exists in creating a subgraph distilled, and some things that'll be there somewhat sooner, a little later. Let's jump into what I believe is the last kind of retrospective feature, and then we'll pivot to what's coming soon and what could come or may never, but we'll see. Your feedback could help drive some of those outcomes too. So declarative ETH calls. Really the gist of this is it's allowing ETH calls to be executed ahead of time so that you can parallelize it. So GraphNode can just make things go faster. One of the big pain points we hear from Subgraph developers working with smart contracts with large or lots of transactions, a lot of users, is it can be speed issues sometimes. And so previously ETH calls were sequentially kind of computed, but now they execute in parallel, which is much better. You do have to specify a little bit which ones to execute in parallel, but it's all just in the subgraph YAML. And similarly to the indexed argument filtering, there's just a new section that you add under the handlers, or the event handlers specifically. And so here is just an example showing which ETH call to execute in parallel. And it's this global 0x128 for the pool event address. And so you can see you can input either an event address or event params type syntax. So it's pretty flexible in that respect of what you can parallelize. This is even newer than indexed argument filtering, so I haven't actually seen any examples of this in the wild yet, so I'd be really curious to see this.
With the improvement of performance, I know metrics are sometimes, well, I guess objective comparisons are difficult to come by because there's so much variation in terms of performance when there's ETH calls and how many ETH calls and all of this. Have you been able to generally get a feel for how much a performance increase, let's say someone's having ETH calls every single block? Hypothetically.
Let's say more coming soon.
Okay. More
we have a developer working on essentially hardening a lot of these metrics and extending our observability for this. So we didn't have it ready for release, but we're basically actively working, or in parallel, working on getting metrics so that we can better communicate how much faster it is. So
awesome.
More
cool.
Coming soon.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, looking forward to that. Anytime I'm at a hackathon or discussing with developers using an ETH call, it's always very much a discussion of if you can avoid it at all costs.
100%.
And
that's still the best practice.
It's still the best practice. This doesn't solve that.
No. But this is when you have to have it.
Yeah.
You can parallelize it. And so ideally we'll have examples where, resources permitting, it would be great to have an example with some pretty heinous ETH calls, some less heinous ETH calls, and then parallelized and comparing that. We'll see if we can make that happen. But I think that would be pretty cool. Like a one for, or like apples to pairs comparison where the subgraph is essentially the same, but using these different development paradigms.
If you're asking for an ugly subgraph, I'm happy to make a very ugly subgraph. That would be a fun challenge.
This is very much a tangent, but the holiday season is coming. We need to have like an ugly subgraph competition, like ugly sweaters, and then you win like a custom sweater or something as the worst subgraph.
Subgraph worst practices. Let's do an ETH call on loop. Well, let's just get caught in the infinite. Why not?
Indexers are sweating right now.
Yeah, we won't tell Indexer office hours that we're considering messing. So, cool. I'm looking forward to tinkering. I haven't had a chance to try the last two, but I have tried the first. So I'm gonna see if I can hop in.
No, it's pretty valid. I honestly haven't either. They're pretty bleeding edge. So we're really excited to get feedback on. Aggregations, of course, but especially indexed argument filtering and declarative ETH calls, because they are so new and haven't had a ton of users yet, just because it just came out. So yeah, Q3. Let's move on to kind of what's coming. This is stuff that we're actively working on right now that should land either in this quarter or early next. So really excited about this. This is kind of just a teaser of what we're working on. So can't share everything, but just wanted to share some of the most exciting stuff. Subgraphs as data source. or reusing existing entities. So one of the pain points for me and others I've heard is not being able to reuse subgraphs or components of subgraphs. There's all this, I mean, you can, if it's a one-for-one, that subgraph is perfect for your need. But if you need to apply some custom mappings, it's not necessarily possible to re-import entities or subgraph as a data source to then use and then extend to your own needs. You could essentially copy-paste their code, which is fine, but that kind of defeats the purpose of a network where you can reuse things and build on things and kind of have these Lego block type data artifacts. And so this is our initial foray into extending subgraphs into being that kind of modular composable data artifact. And so more to come in this line of work. Really excited to extend this, but currently we're enabling users, or we will, it's not out yet, but it'll be out soon, basically pointing to an existing subgraph, being able to ingest those entities, and then apply your own custom mappings to them. So we notice a lot of near duplication on the network, where there's many subgraphs that are indexing the same smart contracts, essentially the same entities, slightly different mappings. And so this is going to be really nice for that use case where people might want to index ERC20 events or some DeFi protocol, and they can't exactly use a standard subgraph that might have been created by a builder like Masari. But now you'd be able to import this kind of data source and then extend it with your own custom mappings.
I have so many questions because this is a paradigm shift, and can we just jump into curiosity right now? Is that okay?
Yeah, and then let me just add one last teaser.
Oh, sure.
I'm excited about how can we then extend this to more than one subgraph, kind of mix and matching entities across subgraphs to then create these higher level overview subgraph that you could then query and building these nested relationships of information. So I'm excited about what this could become. Right now it's limited scope, but still pretty exciting in what it can do. So yeah,
So to be clear, you're working on getting one subgraph as a data source at this time.
Yes, that is the start, just because it's good to have some balance.
Sure, totally.
But after that, definitely want to extend that.
That subgraph, as it's indexed, would be able to have that indexing operation fuel this new subgraph that hypothetically we are building.
Yes.
And that new subgraph would not need to have any compute, any type of processing to do with that other subgraph. There's two separate processing going on, and one is fueling the other.
Yeah, and so this is another one of the reasons why we're investing in more monitoring observability of speed, because we're working on these kind of things that we anticipate could really revolutionize things. Imagine an indexer has these events presynced from this kind of core subgraph. Then any builder who wants to slightly extend those data could just deploy one of these kind of sub data or nested subgraphs, and then
a subgraph.
Yeah.
subgraph.
Yeah.
As it continues on.
Name coming soon. Official name coming soon. But
official name coming soon. The next thoughts that I have would be entity collisions. If there's naming, who gets dibs on naming? I'd imagine the subgraph that is already indexed and fueling the new subgraph would have that. And then I'm curious about the mappings and how that would. I mean, there's already so much creativity just baked in to this. But
this is where we would love feedback. We're currently in the phase of, we have a proof of concept that works. We're going to start internally sharing that with other core devs in the coming weeks. The two devs working on it are basically hardening it to be a little more usable outside of their workflow, kind of productionizing it in a sense. But we want to get some feedback. And so if you're listening to this live or in the recording, please do let us know what you think about this kind of paradigm of development in subgraphs.
Well, my first thought would be, if there's going to eventually be a single endpoint for, let's say, 5 subgraphs, they're all fueling into one subgraph, naming entities and their conventions is going to be super key. So if there's a way to know an entity is connected to a certain subgraph somehow, that would be really nice. And I'm not sure how that would be done, but if I can simply see that with the naming convention, it was generated in a certain way, because that original subgraph developer developing, let's say, that subgraph that is fueling that other subgraph doesn't know that eventually it's going to be built upon.
Totally.
But if there's something that could be part of the process, that as you add a new subgraph, this is subgraph A, B, C, D, as the entities are coming in.
Interesting. Okay. No, yeah.
That would help my brain in terms of like, well, which subgraph is this coming from? This is coming from B. This is coming from C, or something like that.
Okay. No, well, that let's talk offline.
Ideas.
Yeah.
If anyone has comments and ideas in the chat, feel free to drop them.
That's why these are great. I mean, that's the whole point of these calls. I mean, this is admittedly early. Still a lot of dev work to productionize it, and docs, and just kind of the UX side of things. And so there is still chance to shape how this comes to market. So if you have strong opinions, please do let us know. We'd love to hear them.
Awesome work, man. Awesome.
I mean, let's say massive shout out to the devs. Zoran and Krishna are the devs working on this project.
Awesome.
Eon and Marco are the devs working on a lot of the observability stuff. Felipe is another dev on the team working on a lot of great things. Ford is the engineering manager on the GraphNode team. Shout out to all the devs. I kind of just hang out and vibe. I mean, I do a little more than that, but like, mad shout out to the devs. They do most of the really, really hard work, at least when it comes to coding. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm always impressed by some of these incredible. They're those people. There's a few people on Earth that are those people, and they are those people.
Totally.
Yeah.
So one last thing on some in progress stuff before we pivot to the more ideation, what could be, which I'm excited to get some feedback on too. But IPFS robustness improvements, and so this isn't super exciting. It's not necessarily changing the developer experience so much as ensuring that it's reliable, always up, just working whenever you need it, whenever you're deploying your subgraph. And so we're migrating to the IPFS gateway API, which should really help with scalability of our services. And then once that's complete, we're going to start separating file hosting. So kind of the difference between the required subgraph definition files like the manifest, the schema, and mappings versus optional file data sources. And so we noticed that there were a few collisions recently, and so I think that that's also going to improve some robustness for subgraph developers, especially those using the file data sources feature. So really excited for that. Don't really have a ton of docs to share around that because it's namely kind of behind the scenes internal changes, but there should just be a noted improvement in just uptime and reliability for this. So. And yeah, let's move to Idea Land. It's fun. So we have a few ideas cooking right now. This is one that recently I've been getting a little excited on. Been talking to Simone too about. As a cool way to extend subgraphs as a platform for builders to extend themselves. Let me take a sip of coffee. Palpitating a little bit here. Not used to talking so much. It's been a while. But really creating a kind of a bounded playground for builders to extend subgraphs for their needs. And so as we go through, I think you might see some immediately useful examples that we're proposing, but I think there's going to be many potential plugins that we have not even thought about that could really revolutionized how subgraphs are used. So it's really, the idea is you wouldn't have to do much other than specify a plugin in your subgraph manifest. In this example, it's foo and bar. And then in your schema, very similar to the syntax of aggregations, you could specify plugins. And so here you can see this NFT entity has a foo plugin adder field, and I'm calling this foo directive. And then these are some kind of a function, an argument, very similar to the time series aggregation syntax. Similarly, here's a bar plugin. And this is really kind of just a boilerplate text, but as you can see here with the spoiler that I scrolled a little too far down, one of the first ideas that came up for this sort of system is a ENS primary name reverse lookup. We've noticed that builders want the ability to use ENS names instead of addresses. And so offering kind of the ability to have a more native support for that in subgraphs would be useful for many, not necessarily for all, but for many people. And so you can see in this highly realistic pseudo manifest, we have an ENS plugin. This is largely a copy paste of the Gravatar subgraph, but adding a hypothetical ENS plugin. And so this is all you'd really have to change. And then in your schema, you'd be able to add an optional owner ENS name field, and it magically populates using this ENS plugin. And so this could be really cool, extending subgraphs to take ENS as input, especially because I know certain projects leverage ENS pretty heavily as a way to define identity. And so I'm excited about this kind of ability. Another plugin that was kind of requested without being officially a plugin request was adding price feeds to subgraphs. For a lot of DeFi applications and use cases, getting real-world data from an oracle would be super helpful, namely like price feed data of ETH USD price. Currently, that's not really possible in subgraphs, but here in this example, proposing an ability to do that with Chronicle protocol. They're an Oracle, a decentralized Oracle protocol. I have another working, or not working, but a highly realistic fake example using the Chainlink aggregator v3 interface. So still very much in the early stages of kind of product design, but following that same paradigm of just specifying a plugin, and then in the schema, being able to invoke these directives. Here we're using Chronicle and pointing to the Oracle address and kind of the block number as the argument. And so now this schema or this entity will track the price, and then we're nesting that into this aggregation so that you can get the max price per hour or day. And so this is how we're seeing these features kind of interact with each other and provide more value when used together. And then here's the kind of pseudo mapping and query where you're able to just query for max price without having to do any kind of crazy calculations. And I guess I did include the Chainlink example as well, but it's essentially the same type of syntax instead of Chronicle using a hypothetical Chainlink plugin.
And these plugins, this will be part of GraphNode that
potentially.
Of course, yeah, I mean, potentially.
Yeah.
And then open source, of course, so anyone could.
And Graph CLI so that people could, and yeah, there would have to be some kind of SDK so that people could contribute a plugin. And so this is very much still in the idea phase, like not really, like no dev work has started, but it seems like a cool way to promote contribution from external parties to extend it to their needs and reducing kind of gating barriers. There's certain core functionality that probably shouldn't change too often, but there's there's definitely room for this kind of exploratory plugin realm. I think
I
where
mean,
it's
Oracle's right there. I mean, price feeds, of course, but Oracle piping that directly in would be fantastic. And I'm curious, builders out there, if you have any ideas about what you'd want to plug directly in to a
right.
subgraph.
Reach out to us. Like, let
Yeah.
us know. We're
Yeah.
open to this line of thinking because we think it's really cool and exciting and powerful. And so
Yeah.
we would love to hear what you think.
That's really cool. Great work, or great conceptualization to eventually become work, because I hope this
Yeah,
actually,
thanks.
this actually becomes real. This is a cool.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that is it for my presentation. I'm excited about this plugin system idea. I think it could be really cool. Especially, I think Oracle's and Subgraphs having more default integration like this could be really sweet for builders.
Yeah, I mean, to get that data, it's typically done on the smart contract level for oracles, but to actually have that be the subgraph, I'm just thinking where that could fit with. And one of the first things I ever did was connect to a Chainlink Oracle to get a price feed with a smart contract, and that was years ago. And I remember that kind of okay, that's how we get data into the subgraph. So it's once again the Web3 paradigm shifts happen.
No, yeah.
So it's like, okay, well,
and that's still a valid flow.
Sure.
But I think for some people, maybe they're not writing the smart contract, but they still need that data, and so they're in a pinch.
Yeah, and then I mean, once they get that in, they're not writing the smart contract. They are able to grab that data, bring it in, do something creative with maybe a time series aggregation. I mean, there we go. So it's all happening.
Because to me, I'm super bullish on off-chain or not, or I guess it's going to be on-chain in a way with Oracle, but like real-world data, like weather, like weird non-token price related Oracle information. I am super excited to see those kind of applications that kind of interconnect the real world that we're experiencing off-chain. You know what I mean? Like it's hot where I live. It might not be hot where you live. How can that interact this crypto experience that we're all on together, and using subgraphs to kind of mediate that on-chain, off-chain data transfer flow? Because that's valuable data. What's happening in the real world too, the non-chain. And if it goes on-chain, we need to access it.
Totally. I feel like in the next 10 years, we're going to see a much more, I'm looking forward to the goal of so much of Web3 is veracity, and to actually have confidence in the data that you're actually looking at and having trustless, essentially. And so to be able to have Web2, Web3 find a way to think in that direction, create that. And this is another way that we can bring that together. It's just, I'm just loving.
Totally.
Like my brain is like, and the composability of it. I mean, my brain is on fire right now. It's just crazy. So very cool, Paka. Very cool. So with you, could I ask you personally, if you had to pick one feature that you're the most excited for, just one, what would it be? You personally, not
the subgraphs as data sources, reusable entities thing. I think that's going to be really cool.
Why do you think it's going to be really cool?
And like what that could open up with subgraphs and just making them modular data units that people can reuse and stack to their liking. I think that's super cool. To me, as a data nerd, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see that going for you? Like if there's a project today that you could build using these composable subgraphs, do you have an idea what that project would be?
I think that could get really cool with the social side of things. I'm not exactly sure in terms of implementation, but kind of speaking in the interconnectedness of things and how maybe you're able to link people, or not in a like doxing way, but just build community, build connections through subgraph data or on-chain actions. I think that there's probably other projects very much doing this, but I could see that how interconnected data, like maybe composable subgraphs, could really contribute to making these kind of insights more accessible or tangible.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm thinking I would want to find a way to have socials and art. I'm thinking in terms of valuation and
Even just
saying,
DeFi, you know what I mean? If you could just have all the chains in one like overview subgraph, you just pipe in.
that would be so just simple. Let's just start simple. Let's just start simple. I'm already getting
I know. I was trying to go like the big, like, just like,
one subgraph to rule them all.
Yeah, just the DeFi subgraph or because then you could have like maybe it's a DAO that forms where it's curated, like a data DAO where you're curating a subgraph based on certain protocols or projects, and you could vote on what goes in that finalized subgraph.
You know who's going to love this is Messari. Messari, with their categories, they have, in exchanges, I think they have 30 subgraphs or something like that. So if they were able to have one exchange subgraph.
No, that would be super cool. Yeah. One gaming, one social subgraph. Yeah. They're also heavily the reason to inspire that kind of price feed plugin. They have been asking for some kind of price feed functionality for a while. And so this is kind of our initial foray into seeing how we can solve that.
Yeah. Shout out to the Messari devs, power users.
No, they're great.
They are brilliant. There's a question in Discord. I'm currently working on this, but tracking log indices as well to differentiate different types of users. And he shares a GitHub link. Can I track just mint counts with indexed argument filtering? Maybe to add a field to see the number of times the token was minted. Let's see. It sounds like he's just trying to this pre-filtering. It sounds like, Chidabum, it sounds like you're totally able to do that. Can I add a field to see the number of times the token was minted? Does it do count? Does pre-filtering do count, or does it just drop in?
I don't think it does count. I mean,
it doesn't count. Okay, gotcha. So just simply,
if you don't mind, to reach out via that form and let's talk, because there might be a way. I think I'd need a little time to look at the code and let the brain gears turn a little.
Perfect.
I'm admittedly not going to be able to answer this.
Perfect. Yep. They did the adventures of real time. Chidabum, reach out to Paka. You guys will have a good chat. Let's see where it goes.
Also, shout out Chidabum. What's up?
Yeah, man. Shout out Chidabum. Had a good chat with him earlier. Let's see. No questions from Lewis. Lewis has some good questions sometimes. Is there anything you, Paka, while I'm scrolling through here, would like to say to builders in the graph ecosystem? I know you're looking for feedback. Is there anything else? Maybe like how to contact you? Let's start with that, and then anything else that you would like to say.
Yeah. I think Marcus has my X handle. Also, feel free to reach out to me directly on email. I can share that with Marcus as well.
There is a question. Lewis has a good question. As a product manager, what's your take on data sets' future being cheaper and cheaper as more people will start dropping them? And the fact that the only thing that might be relevant will be live data and off-chain RWA/data.
I'll give like a TLDR take, and then I'll give a slightly more off-the-cuff. I haven't spent enough time. The TLDR official take is I haven't spent enough time to have an official opinion on this. The off-the-cuff take is I think that may very well be valid. That those are the only kind of quote-unquote relevant things. I think that's okay. I don't think that the market has to be super saturated with the other stuff. But also it might not. I think that if I'm just being honest, my official take answer was partially the off the cuff too. Just I haven't spent too much time thinking on that. But I do. Yeah. I think there's a limit to how much the price can go down, because I think that operators, their prices are not going down. And so I think there's a tension between that. I don't know how that's resolved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
It's saying free is the limit. Aha.
it's like they have to charge or they have to pay to serve the data.
It's this, for me, it's the argument of the, I just saw a recent video, and pardon my French, but it's great. It's about the enshittification of technology and essentially capitalistic motivators of any type of open marketplace where, of course, there's going to be competition, and the way that competition is how do you go ahead and have it be cheaper and faster and better and cheaper and faster and better until it eventually becomes even if it's super high quality, even if it's like amazing.
I can't really I don't have power to change market forces of my pay grade. You know what I mean? So I guess I hope things play out a certain way. I don't think any of us really know what's going to happen. There might be clues as to like the long trend.
I think like just the fact that we have a functional token incentivizing action, that is and just in the graph specifically, and Web3 as a whole has a buffer that those capitalistic forces for the data set and really anything will have at least a chance to be buffered in this economy.
I feel like also I hear about this in a certain way, but it's not necessarily spoken of directly. I think that we're an enthusiast community. We are passionate. We love what we do. Like, we are passionate. And I think that also has some resistive power. There's hyper-capitalists that are also super passionate about this. But I think that there's some kind of Web3 ethos that, in a way, maybe I'm being way too rose-colored glasses, solar punk optimism, but I don't know. I think that there is some resistive force in that energy that I can definitely feel in the community that I haven't felt in Web2 circles. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I feel. Yes, that is a valuable primitive hope. So, let's see. I'm just seeing conversation in the chat right now. This is Lewis's response back to your response. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. It's Moore's law until it isn't anymore, and new laws are built, aka chips and computers. I'm passionate about future problems. Prep for the worst, hope for the best is my motto. Thank you for that question.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that list.
So
I'll have to start prepping for the worst a little more.
The ironic thing is to prep for the worst. Sometimes just feeling the best does very well. So I'm seeing if there's any more questions. No questions right now, but we had a good turnout. I'm seeing over 500 people 600 people now in Twitter that have viewed this. So good job. I'm happy that yeah, man. And so hi everyone on Twitter, and I'm going to call it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. I think that's not.
Okay, I was like,
it's forever Twitter.
He's resisting.
Yeah, it's forever Twitter, and that's how and if anybody has questions for Paka, I dropped his Twitter in the chat, both in Discord and on Twitter. So please reach out to him. His DMs are open. He is the guy for GraphNode, and he's kind of managing the ship and the sails for where GraphNode is heading. So I want to say thank you so much for your time today, Paka. You were awesome, and I'm really excited for these features. That composability is crazy. And I also looking forward to seeing what people can do with this kind of this next phase of stuff. So is there anything else that you'd like to say? I'll let you have the last few seconds here. This is you and your microphone and the audience. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we head out together?
Thanks for the opportunity. It's great to be here. Happy to come back whenever. And also, let's build a Subgraph together as a community.
Yeah,
I think that could be a fun project. You know,
that would be cool. Thank you, everyone, for joining Graph Builder's office hours. And I'll be seeing you next week, Thursday, same time. Take care.